Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Theresa May and the Austrian Chancellor were determinedly upbeat in Salzburg today, with Sebastian Kurz opining that negotiations about Britain's exit from the EU were going quite well, and it was important to avoid a hard or disorderly Brexit. But were the warm words more than just that? Michel Barnier, who's already batted away Britain's proposed customs arrangement, has been keeping a tight grip on the 27. In the words of another Frenchman, all for one and one for all is a line that seems so far to be holding. There's flash photography in this report by our diplomatic editor, Mark Urban.
The Salzburg Festival. The hills really are alive with the sound of music. There's cake and politics too. It's a suitable stage for Theresa May to perform, trying to solve a problem like non-tariff access for goods and agricultural products, with the hope that member states might prove more amenable than Michel Barnier and the EU Commission bureaucrats.
We have published our white paper with our proposed future relationship between the UK and the European Union, and I look forward to being able to discuss that with you.
And the EU's negotiator does not have universal support.
I think Barnier's motives, in my view, are not necessarily always very objective, because I've noticed in the last couple of months that he doesn't seem to be very interested in a good Brexit. My view is that he has one objective. He wants to demonstrate to other countries that it is not worthwhile leaving the European Union.
But what a woeful day to be trying to enthuse the Czech, Estonian or Austrian leaders when just yesterday Michel Barnier seems to have shot down her Chequers blueprint.
The EU cannot and the EU will not delegate the application of its customs policy and rules, VAT and excise duty collection to a non-member who would not be subject to the EU's governance structures.
But Barnier represents certain principles, and the Chequers agreement hasn't really moved the dial on that.
I hope that the UK remains as close to the EU as possible, but what's more important is that we can find a solution that is actually legally workable. And in my opinion, the customs union, as Michel Barnier also said, and as has been hinted by some on the UK side, could be a solution.
When the Brussels dog bites or the bee stings, the UK government thinks of its favourite things, like trying to appeal to national agendas. Ireland, Belgium and the Netherlands have the economies most integrated with ours and therefore fear disorderly Brexit most. Austria, Italy and Denmark worried about immigration, potentially in favour of stronger border controls. And East Europeans like the Poles, Czechs and Hungarians who would miss the UK budget contributions and at the same time have some ideological sympathy for Brexit. But that approach hasn't worked.
The EU remains more and more united because we understand very well that the red lines make sense. They are actually quite logical. They're not rocket science. They follow from the acquis. They follow from what a customs union means. They follow from what obligations we have towards other third countries with whom we have trade agreements. So no, I don't see more light coming between the 27. In fact, I think with every day of chaos in the UK, the unity on the EU side is stronger.
Austria's government currently has the rotating EU presidency, and its only initiative so far has been to suggest an extension of the Article 50 negotiating time. But with the 27 standing firm and Theresa May struggling to keep her Brexit blueprint alive, it may be time for some creative thinking.
Both Britain and the EU would be well advised to start thinking about a plan B. That plan B being what happens if there is no agreement. And the first installment of that plan B has got to be an extension of Article 50. In other words, Britain remains in the European Union until there is a deal.
So Theresa May has made her pitch and said so long auf Wiedersehen goodbye to her hosts. There'll be little happening negotiation-wise for weeks now, and at the end of it all, an EU position that's unlikely to have softened.
Mark Urban there. Well, I spoke a little earlier this evening to Austria's Foreign Minister, Karen Kneißl. I began by asking her if there's any point in Theresa May touring Europe trying to win support for a Brexit plan if Michel Barnier had already dismissed it.
Well, I think that, of course, we have this direct negotiation part between Commissioner Michel Barnier and the British government. But on the other side, I think it's also always useful to have this bilateral diplomacy through Madam Prime Minister Theresa May taking place. And it's about identifying the one or the other topic that, in that case now, with her visit in Salzburg, to meet the EU chair, to meet Chancellor Sebastian Kurz, that can serve from time to time.
Your Chancellor has said today to Theresa May that he is actually keen for a deal. But our own Trade Secretary is saying that the EU is turning them down at every turn. And so therefore the possibility is that there won't be a deal.
Well, there have been already also the one or the other arrangements going on in simply preparing for the unprepared in terms of what happens if there is no agreement. I mean, everybody is preparing for different scenarios, which is useful because you always have to think in life in scenarios, not only put your eggs in one basket. But what I think, and I'm not involved in these negotiations, to a certain extent is also part of tactics in negotiations. But I don't have insight because I'm not part of any negotiation team, but from my own experience I might state this might be part of negotiation tactics. Even so, I may add the topic is so important that one should not be put too much on tactics, but have a strategy.
But do you, as your country's Minister for Foreign Affairs, have sympathy with Theresa May? Because you came to power on the back of the migration issue, and the migration issue was a key issue for Theresa May in the Brexit vote.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you might have the one or the other sympathy, but I think here we really speak of hardcore interests. And when it comes to customs union and when it comes to issues like tariffs, etc., and the Irish question, this is something that that has to be decided by London, in its internal politics, and of course on the other side by the United 27. And here empathy, sympathy or whatever is not so, should not enter so much. When I met previous Brexit Minister David Davis and Boris Johnson, I always stated what counts for us as Austrian government and as chair is a pragmatic approach. It has to function. I personally, as Karen Kneißl, the Minister for Foreign Affairs, I've never become, I never was at any moment pathetic about the whole topic. It has to be a feasible contract that can be put at work, so that on 29th of May, 30th of May, if the whole time schedule is kept the way it was designed, that we do have then predictability.
Right, so that means, I think what you're saying in a sense is, you want something that's practical, it's not disorderly. But what you also seem to be saying in this interview is that as far as the 27 countries are concerned, what Michel Barnier says goes.
Exactly. I mean, he was appointed to be the voice, the negotiator of the remaining European Union. And here the core interests are economic interests.
So, on the point of negotiation, you just mentioned Boris Johnson, and in the past you said that you were a fan of Boris Johnson's when he was Foreign Secretary. Do you think that he would make a better job of the negotiations with Michel Barnier and Theresa May.
I've never seen Boris Johnson. Yeah, it's not up to me to interfere here in any way in internal British politics, really. What is our position? It has to happen, it has to work. That's what I stated in my encounters with David Davis and with Boris Johnson in the past. Dominic Raab and Jeremy Hunt might see me in the next few days, and the message to be repeated is it has to work. So it's a pragmatic approach.
Karen Knizel, thank you very much for joining us.